The organization was huge and very powerful and influential by that time. We've surmised that this might be your grandfather because these are probably her grandchildren.
And then her grandson's wife is Helen, right? My grandmother. And she was killed by a drunk driver.
Is that true?
Helen Hunt is in Portland, Maine, investigating her great-great-grandmother Augusta Hunt's role in the temperance movement in the late 1800s.
Herb recommended I talk to Professor Carol Mattingly, who I've asked to look into how my great-great-grandmother was involved in temperance. She's asked me to meet her at the Neil Dow House, headquarters for Maine's branch of the Women's Christian Temperance Union. My great-great-grandfather traded sugar very successfully, and I learned that his wife was very active in the Women's Christian Temperance Union.
You didn't know.
And I've learned that it gives me a slight bit of anxiety to say all those words pushed in together.
Why are you so nervous about this?
I don't know. Tell me more.
Okay, I'm going to tell you why I think you're nervous.
Okay.
Because the WCTU is associated with a prudish movement that failed.
Right.
The reason women joined the WCTU in such huge numbers is because alcohol abuse was so rampant in the 19th century.
Right.
And the primary result women felt was the physical and sexual abuse of women and children. And so they rallied around the temperance topic.
There was a dark side to the 19th century love affair with liquor. Alcoholism spiked, even in children, and domestic violence took a steep toll on families and society as a whole. Married women like Augusta had few legal rights at the time. They couldn't vote or sign contracts, and divorcing was difficult at best. But women became a powerful force for social change when they banded together against rampant alcohol abuse and other social ills.
Well, they were all about getting voice for women.
That's amazing.
Your great-great-grandmother did the welcoming address at the 11th annual convention. If you would start reading just
Here, when we consider the well-known and sad fact that women have always been the greatest sufferer from the misery caused by intemperance, does it not seem strange that nearly 90 years of such suffering were required to reveal to women their duty upon this question? That's an amazing thing to have done.
These are pictures of your great-great-grandmother, Augusta Barstow Hunt. She was really active in the WCTU in the 1880s and 1890s, which would have been their heyday, which the organization was huge and very powerful and influential by that time. We've surmised that this might be your grandfather because these are probably her grandchildren.
And then her grandson's wife is Helen, right? My grandmother. And she was killed by a drunk driver.
Is that true?
It's just interesting to watch your own snap judgments rise up and crumble away, you know? I knew nothing about her. Then I heard she had been in these organizations. I heard the word temperance, and I have an utterly uneducated idea about what that is. And then to have it sort of blossom in this beautiful, painful way that she was involved in sort of excruciating issues. And then, you know, how my father's mother was killed, and then I have a real connection to because I've grown up with my dad and wondered or imagined or glimpsed what the effect of that was. Pretty amazing. I don't know how long she lived, so I don't know where in the span of her life this happened, you know? Was this the last thing she did? Was this the beginning? It impresses me that even as a widow with children, my great-great-grandmother, Augusta, still made it a priority to be involved in social change. Carol has sent me to see Professor Shannon Risk, who studies women's history. Shannon said she would research for me what else Augusta was able to accomplish for women's rights. I just came from the WCTU, the name of which filled me with fear and dread until I found out what they did, and then it humbled me and moved me that what they were doing was about much more than I ever bothered to learn about or imagine. So what else can you tell me about Augusta?
Not only was Augusta involved in the WCTU, we have pulled out some things about your great-great-grandmother. And the first is a biography, and it starts right here and goes on to the next page. So she was about 62 when they're writing about her.
Wow. Mrs. Hunt remained president of the Portland Women's Christian Temperance Union for 15 years. Under her direction, the Coffee House and Friendly Inn, day nursery, and free kindergartens were adopted as branches of the work of this organization. This biography says that my great-great-grandmother was instrumental in starting daycare, bringing female guards to co-ed prisons, and getting women elected to school boards. That's remarkable. Under her leadership, the council was instrumental in having a law passed which gives to a mother an equal right with a father in the care and guardianship of minor children.
So this was a way for Augusta and her cohorts to be political in a society that did not accept women in politics.
I mean, I know many women have had to choose between being present with their children and getting something done in the world that's going to affect generations and generations. So, you know, to the extent that she did both at once, I think that's a big deal, actually.
It was so important to her. This work was so important. And again, they've turned outward into society.
That's huge.
As the temperance movement gained strength, women shifted their focus to larger issues, and the women's rights movement was born. Some 40 years before Augusta got involved, the movement for women's rights burst onto the national stage in 1848 with a two-day event called the Seneca Falls Convention. Here, Elizabeth Cady Stanton made international headlines by declaring that women deserved the right to vote, a shocking and controversial idea at the time. Soon after, Stanton teamed with Susan B. Anthony to focus the women's movement on this key issue: voting rights for women.
And so I want to show you this document that is the proposal from 1917 to be signed into law, they hope, giving women the right to vote.
So this is demanding that they put this up to vote.
Right. And so Augusta and her colleagues gathered thousands of signatures on petitions, and the Maine state legislature agrees, but now they must turn it out into male voting society to see what will happen.
Oh, it's thrilling and enraging all at once.
Yes. At this point, Augusta is in her mid-70s, but we know that she remains active in the fight for the women's vote. Mm-hmm. The referendum returns come back, and in most communities, they vote the resolution down. The ratio is about 2 to 1.
I think about women having daughters and having to explain that to your daughter. I mean, my daughter, I'm not looking forward to having her even begin to understand that there was a day when, you know, when women were treated differently than men were in such a huge and radical way.